For your final lesson of the semester, you folks are going to be combining everything that you've learned in this class up to this point. Going to be combining placement, proportion, and perspective with overlapping, with negative space, with a full range of values in order to create a tunnel book. Now, a tunnel book is very much like a diorama. Any of you that have made a diorama before, think of your grade school and your middle school years where you were given the assignment to create a scene like in a shoebox, and there was a hole in the front of the shoebox that the viewer looked through, and when you looked through it, it could be like a picture of the jungle or a scene of the safari, and you would stack up different things with overlapping, and you'd create a scene. Tunnel books are very much the same kind of idea, except instead of using three-dimensional objects, you're going to be drawing and cutting out objects out of Bristol board or high-quality paper. So the important thing to recognize with tunnel books is that there is always a frame. You want that front frame to be a part of your design, and then every level back that you go, you will be creating different layers of your foreground, your middle ground, and your background, and you'll be stacking them up to create one completed scene. So with this assignment, the first thing that you are going to be required to do is to design a tunnel book that has 5 different layers. 5 layers that include your actual frame and then the background going all the way back in the back. So the frame could be, will definitely be a part of your foreground. Layer 2 could be another layer of your foreground. Layer 3 would be your middle ground, layer 4 would be a second layer of the middle ground, and then layer 5 will be your background all the way back in the back. So there's multiple steps that you're going to have to go through in order to create these tunnel books. What I want you to really pay attention in your design is the way the tunnel books are constructed and held together is all about the accordion fold on the left side and the right side. Don't worry, I'll give a separate instruction on how to do that and how to combine everything together in later on next week. But what you really want to pay attention to is that for each of your layers, your middle ground and your foreground layers, they've got to stretch across the entire part of the tunnel book. This helps keep things together. It also helps ensure that that none of your pieces that are floating in the middle are going to fall out. It sticks everything together and it holds everything together exactly how you design it. So here's a real interesting example of the tunnel book over on the right-hand side. There you can see the 5 different layers going back. You can see how the negative space has been cut out of each layer. And you can see when you look at this tunnel book from the front view going back, how you really get that sense of placement and proportion when you look at it. The objects that are closest to you are further down at the base in the foreground. The farther away each of these people and all of the elements get from you, the further up in the foreground it gets. It's all about really nailing this idea of cutting out negative space and getting overlapping. That is the biggest thing that you're going to hit with this project. Now, when you look at this, it's pretty obvious. This is not drawn on. This is all done with collage work. So collage, because of the photo montage work that you've done, that you did earlier this year, that is also an option for you. So you're going to be able to use a variety of media. You could do 100% collage. You could have some elements of collage done in with drawing on top of it. It's how you create this tunnel book is really going to be focused on your strengths and your interests. There's a couple of more examples. So the frame in this piece would be the trees that are up closest to you, with the little girl standing in front. Layer number 2 would be this green hill with this set of trees and this set of trees and the girl back behind. Layer number 3 is that final set of trees going all the way back. And this is only a 4-layer tunnel book. Remember, you're going to be doing 5. And then your 5th layer is that blue background back in the back. Here's another one. frame layer, your foreground, this set of trees here. Layer number 2, the praying mantis with this other grasshopper or another praying mantis. Layer number 3, the hill with more trees back behind it. And then layer number 4 with the blue sky and the clouds. These are more of shadow boxes, but it uses the same kind of idea. Each layer is, instead of being drawn on, each layer is shaded in with a different color pencil. So the deepest, darkest blacks are a 6B. The medium grays back in the back will be like a 2B or a 4B. The light gray is going to be your HB or your 2H, and then the light area back in the back here. So this is actually, all of the drawing is done with the use of negative space. And with these two examples, these are really good examples of how you want to make sure that your subject of your tunnel book is going to be the closest thing to you. You don't, if this guy, the mushroom with the bug sitting on it, if that was back all the way back in the back, all of these figures would be covering it up, and then you wouldn't be able to see this. So you can really make this like insanely detailed if you want with your overlapping. The more details you add to it, the more objects that are overlapping on top, the more you play with that negative space with the depth of placement and proportion, the more interesting your piece is going to end up looking. Here's another shadow box style. This is real interesting. In what I want you to pay attention to here is look at how the frame at the front, the foreground frame is, the opening is much larger, and then the further back you go, the more layers that this artist added to it, the smaller the frame gets. This really creates that heightened sense of depth because it literally makes a tunnel going all the way back. It's a real easy way to use the format of the tunnel book to create that heightened sense of depth and space. Here's another one. This is a combination of markers with colored pencil to get all of the patterns, the colored patterns back behind the black and white hatch marks. All of the lettering is cut out and collaged on. The figures are cut out and collaged on. But once again, this creates that tunnel effect. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different layers, including the background. And the more layers you have going back like this, the more of the sense of depth and space that you'll end up getting with your tunnel book. This is also a combination of collage with paint over the top. This uses that same idea with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different layers set up. What I like about this piece is comparing these two, the frames are uneven organic shapes. You can play with the shapes of your frames for real, or it can be more even and geometric shapes like this. So here's an example of a type of tunnel book. This is my example that I used last year for this assignment. The tunnel books that you're going to make are going to be this size. This is 6 inches tall by 6 inches wide. And what you're really going to pay attention to, a couple of tricks for you to look at here. When you look at the image straight on, you clearly get that sense of the foreground, the middle ground, and then the background back in the back. What I want you to really pay attention to is that in creating your tunnel books, you want to use the frame as a part of your design element. Don't just have a square frame like a picture frame or like a TV frame with all of the images back in the back. Use this surface because that's going to absolutely heighten your sense of depth and space. The other trick that I want to show you is when you look at this, so it's real hard to see. I'm going to peel this apart. My background, I did not draw my whole background from the top all the way down to the bottom. I stopped my background when I drew this. I stopped my background at about right here, because all of this area down in the back, all the way down to the bottom, I knew that this wasn't going to be seen. No viewer was going to see it. So why in the world would I draw all of that in? That just makes extra work for you. So really plan out where your background, middle ground, and foreground are going to end, so you know exactly what you're going to draw. It's the same thing when you look at it's super hard to see. When you look at the middle ground, I didn't draw that all the way down. When you look at the foreground, I didn't draw that all the way down, because all of those elements are covered up with this. The other thing that I want you to pay attention to is when you look at it, check it out. Each of these layers stretch all the way across my tunnel book. You have to have each of these layers have to stretch all the way across. If you don't, if I like just drew the tentacles here and didn't have that stretching all the way across, they would just fall out. There would be no way to hold it in the tunnel book. That is the number one mistake that students make, is they're like, oh, I'm going to do a boat, and then they just draw a boat, and they cut out the boat, and there's no way to connect it all the way to the left and to the right. Don't make extra work for yourself. So your job is to, number one, come up with a sketch. Come up with a simple drawing, a little bit of shading going on, but just come up with a simple drawing of what you want your tunnel book to look like. So this is the first stage of this drawing, is just coming up with a plan. What am I going to draw? And you can do whatever you want with this, as long as it's school appropriate. So you can do something realistic, you can do something fantastic, you can base it on a video game or a movie or a book, you can base it on something that you've completely made up. That's what I did with this. I got a robot chicken that's breaking chicken eggs. I don't know why, I just thought it would be an interesting thing to draw and turn into a tunnel book. Once you get your initial sketch done, your next job is to figure out, okay, where's my background, where's my middle ground, where's my foreground? How am I going to break that up? So in this design, my background is going to be the blue skies and the clouds. So here's my background layer. This, I plan on going in and adding way more details into the clouds. I'm going to use colored pencils to go in and shade from a dark blue at the top down to a light blue at the bottom. And I'm gonna stop that at about right here, because I know that all of this is going to get covered up anyway. So if this is my background, then my middle ground layer is going to be the mountains with some of the ground. I did the mountain and the ground layer. I actually think that it would probably be better if I cut this layer right here, so that I've got that extra stack up. It's just going to heighten up that sense of depth and space. And then my foreground layer is going to be the chicken stepping on eggs. Here's my chicken stepping on eggs here. I notice this is not the same as this. You are allowed to change your design from the initial first draft over to the final draft. I made him a little angrier instead of confused and like, oh, what am I doing? It's just a narrative thing, and that's totally fine. I did not get a chance at this point to create the frame, but the frame is going to be broken and cracked eggs coming all the way around. So this, when you look at this, just to, like, as you take these layers and stack it up, you can start to see that depth come in, but you really get that depth, you really get that sense of depth when you take these pieces, these different layers, and you stack them up and actually hold them with a little bit of distance away from each other. You can see how this is going to build up that depth and space in the tunnel box. So due on Friday, that is the 4th of December. When you come into class, I will be walking around asking to see everybody's sketches, and you will have to show me what your plan is, and you will also have to demonstrate what parts of the plan are going to be divided up into your background, middle ground, and foreground. You can draw the background off to one side, the middle ground off to one side, or the foreground off to one side, or you could just go in and write, this is my background, this is my middle ground, this is my foreground, just so you are aware of how you're going to build this up.